Death. Death is certain. Death is absolute. Death gives life meaning. Death has always fascinated mortals, and it is this fascination which drives monks of the way of the long death. And what creature in mythology could epitomize both our fascination and aversion to death better than a vampire? They are immortal, denying death to themselves at the expense of the lives of others. They can eventually even recover from their own deaths. In looking at the best way to optimize the way of the long death monk, I found that we can draw on the inspiration that vampires provide and use this to guide us towards a better way to use these monks' features. Let us discuss. Level 3. Touch of Death. At level 3, when you reduce a creature within 5 feet of you to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your wisdom modifier plus your monk level. The feature is intriguing but unreliable. The extra hit points are nice, however monks typically do not deal enough damage to consistently be the ones to kill their enemies. Short of some controversial tricks, such as the killing of small animals in a bag which we carry at all times, this is a difficult feature to optimize. Additionally, when allies such as the Twilight Cleric are so proficient at granting temporary hit points, it may be we won't gain much benefit from this feature. Level 6. Hour of Reaping. At 6th level, when we take this action, each creature within 30 feet of you that can see you must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be frightened of you until the end of your next turn. This is secretly the way of Long Death's most powerful feature. It provides a lot of the benefits of the fear spell, causing the frightened condition over a large area of creatures. While it only lasts until the end of our next turn, there's no limit on it, so we can use it as much as we like. Also, it is not a spell, so it doesn't require concentration, and therefore we can stack it with concentration spells. And if we have the ability to cast a spell as a bonus action, then we can combine it with this feature as part of the same turn. Also, because this feature is considered neither a spell or an attack, there will be some unforeseen benefits which we can exploit. Well, just to make sure that our allies aren't afraid of us also. Level 11. Mastery of Death. At 11th level, whenever you are reduced to 0 hit points, you can spend 1 key point to instead be reduced to 0 hit points. This is an astonishing ability, and rightly is the subclass's most famous feature. However, for most campaigns it's not going to be very helpful, as you are likely to not reach these levels or remain there for long. Because of this, it's not a great feature to try to build around, despite its power. Level 17. Touch of the Long Death. At 17th level, as an action, you touch one creature within 5 feet of you, and you expend 1 to 10 key points. The target must make a Constitution saving throw, and it takes 2d10 necrotic damage per key point spent on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. This allows the monk to expend most of their ki at once to deliver up to 20d10 necrotic damage with one action. That's equivalent to about 110 damage, or 55 damage on a successful Constitution saving throw. For a class which up to now hasn't had any buffs to its damage dealing, this is a useful ability. But it comes very late game, and there are much more efficient ways to destroy creatures than this. Subclass Overview. This subclass does a satisfactory job of delivering the fantasy of a master over death. The features we gain at level 3 and 6 will let us lean into tanking and control effects in battle, so our build will look at how we can take these to the next level. We will also consider ways in which we can maximise our damage dealing, so we can make the most out of the 3rd level feature. The Way of the Vampire. For inspiration, we can find many examples of vampires in popular media. From Nosferatu and Dracula to Marceline from Adventure Time. As for me though, I'm going to be looking at the popular depiction in Stephenie Meyer's book. Who is it?
Oh, you know. A real fucking vampire.
For our race, we're going to pick either Variant Human or Custom Lineage, as there's an important feat we need for this build. Fey Touched. This is a half feat, so we'll be able to put a +1 into our Wisdom score. It also gives us the Misty Step spell, and a 1st level enchantment or divination spell. We need this to pick up a very important spell for us. Heroism. In addition to granting a creature our Wisdom modifier in temporary hit points at the start of each of its turns, the spell makes them immune to being frightened. This is a great buff on its own, but later this is going to complement our Hour of Reaping effect very well, as it can help us avoid frightening key allies. Our ability scores will depend on whether we want our vampire to wield a gun or not. If we want to go for the gun variant inspired by Hellsing's Alucard, then we should pick up Custom Lineage and have the following ability scores. A Strength of 8, a Dexterity of 15, which we will add 2 to from our racial ASIs, a Constitution of 12, a Wisdom of 15, which we will add our +1 from Fey Touch to, a Charisma of at least 13, and lastly an Intelligence of 8. This will allow us to pick up the Gunner feat at our 1st ability score increase and round out our dexterity to 18. If we don't want to use a gun and want to be a more traditional vampire, then instead we will pick Variant Human and go with these options. Strength of 8, Dexterity of 15 plus 1 from our racial ability score increase, a Constitution of 12, a Wisdom of 15, which will add a +1 from Fey Touched, and Charisma of 13, which will add a +1 again from our racial ability score increase. And lastly, an Intelligence of 8. We're going to go with the Variant Human option, as this is better for optimizing the Long Death Monk. But the gun variant is really good, as it will increase our damage and give us a good melee and ranged option, which pairs nicely with Hour of Reaping. For our skills, I think focusing on both charisma and dexterity based skills will work well for us. We'll be able to grab 2 charisma skills from our class, so I suggest we pick up stealth and perception from our race. Level 1. Sorcerer 1. We're going to start with Sorcerer, picking the Shadow Sorcerer subclass. Strength of the Grave gives us the ability to recover from a hit that takes us to 0 hit points if we can pass a charisma saving throw. If we went with Variant Human, then we currently have a +4 to our charisma save, so we've got reasonable odds if we're felled by only a small bit of damage. We are pretty squishy, so this is a useful feature to have. We'll also have some ways to mitigate damage too. The great thing about this feature on this particular build is it makes up for the fact that Master over Death doesn't turn up until 11th level of Monk, so we get a lot of that flavour from the get-go. We also gain Dark Vision of 120 feet. This can help us avoid friendly fire from Hour of Reaping, as our superior Dark Vision means we won't need to rely on torches to see. This means later we can potentially use darkness to hide us from our allies when we use Hour of Reaping. For our cantrips, we will need to pick up Blade Ward and Minor Illusion. Otherwise, pick your favourites, but I really like Chill Touch and Booming Blade. Blade Ward, as in our previous builds, pairs really well with Monk's Patient Defense when we want to tank. Minor Illusion gives us a way to potentially block line of sight between us and allies when we use it in conjunction with our Reaping. We aren't going to be focused on damage dealing with this build, but Chill Touch is a good way of dealing with creatures who can regenerate, so is effectively a great damage dealer in those contexts. Also, it causes undead creatures to attack us with disadvantage, which leans into our role as a creature of the night really well. Booming Blade gives us a way to deal extra damage to enemies in melee, particularly useful since we will be delaying our extra attack feature. For our first level spells, we're going to grab both Shield and Absorb Elements. We're pretty squishy, so we're going to rely on our spells to defend ourselves. Shield will boost our armor class to a much higher level when we need it. Absorb Elements, meanwhile, can reduce incoming damage, so it can make Strength of the Grave more likely to save us when elemental damage would ordinarily reduce us to 0 hit points. At this level, I think we're best off using Heroism to support an ally who is perhaps getting into melee, like a Paladin, Fighter or Barbarian. Once we've done this, then we can assist with damage dealing from the sidelines. If we get into trouble, we can use Misty Step for a quick escape and pair this with Booming Blade. Alternatively, we can use Blade Ward and hope Strength of the Grave saves us from going down. Level 2. Sorcerer 1, Monk 1. With Monk 1, we gain Unarmored Defense, so our armor class is now 16 or 21 when we use the Shield spell. We also gain Martial Arts, so can deal a decent bit of damage in melee when we need to. Level 3. Sorcerer 1, Monk 2. We gain Unarmored Movement and Ki. Our movement speed is now 40 feet. Step of the Wind can help us get out of melee or position ourselves on the battlefield better. Patient Defense pairs nicely with Blade Ward, allowing us to dodge on the same turn we give ourselves to resistance to physical forms of damage. Flurry of Blows lets us turn up the damage more when we need to. Level 4. Sorcerer 1, Monk 3. We gain our subclass, the Way of Long Death. The subclass feature really doesn't change our tactics too much. However, we may want to try and secure a killing blow in battle early in the day, perhaps throwing Flurry of Blows on top of our attack when we're attacking the last enemy of the battlefield to guarantee it. This way we'll have topped up our temporary hit points before any future battles that day. At this level, this will gain us 6 temporary hit points, which helps make up for our low constitution score. We also gain Deflect Missiles. This is another way we can reduce incoming damage, helping our low hit points go further, as well as improving the odds of Strength of the Grave saving us when we get into a bad situation. Level 5. Sorcerer 1, Monk 4. At this level we gain our first ability score increase. If we're using the Alucard or Gun variant, we'll pick up the Gunner feat to round out our dexterity score. If we're using the optional Monk feature Dedicated Weapon, we can make a gun our Monk weapon, so we can still use our martial arts in combination with it. If we chose Variant Human, we'll instead be boosting our Wisdom by +2. This increases our armor class to 17, or 22 when we use Shield. It will also boost the temporary hit points we grant using Heroism to 4, and the temporary hit points we gain from Touch of Death becomes 8. We also gain Slow Fall, again helping us to mitigate some forms of physical damage. And our cantrips improve, so our damage from Booming Blade goes up by 1d8 on the initial attack, and an additional d8 for the secondary damage. Level 6. Sorcerer 1, Monk 5. We gain both extra attack and Stunning Strike. Our DC to land Stunning Strike is pretty good if we went with the Variant Human option, as we have quite high Wisdom, giving us a DC of 15. If we're fighting 1 or 2 strong enemies, then running in and trying to land Stunning Strike is a solid strategy. And if it goes badly wrong, we can use either Step of the Wind or Misty Step to make a quick exit. Meanwhile, extra attack on top of Flurry of Blows gives us more opportunities to land the finishing blow on a creature, so we should reliably be able to benefit from Touch of Death at least once or twice a day. If we're using the Gun variant, we can potentially benefit from the optional feature Focused Aim and Ki Fueled Attack. If we spend a key point to use Focused Aim on one of our initial attacks to change it from a miss into a hit, then we'll be able to make an additional attack with one of our Monk weapons as a bonus action. If our gun is considered a monk weapon, then this would allow us to make 3 attacks in a single turn with it. Level 7. Sorcerer 1, Monk 6. Our unarmoured movement increases our speed to 45 feet and we gain our best feature, Hour of Reaping. This allows us to impose the frightened condition on multiple creatures with no resource cost to us. The biggest issue with this feature, however, is friendly fire, as we can't direct this effect. Thankfully though, we've got lots of ways to mitigate this. Firstly, we should keep in mind that the frightened condition is worst for martial characters, especially melee ones. If we want to protect a martial ally from the fear effect, we can start off the combat by casting Heroism on them. This makes them both immune to the frightened condition and gives them 4 temporary hit points each round, so it's worth the setup round if we need it. Other characters such as spellcasters won't be as badly affected by the frightened condition, as often they'll instead rely on saving throws. Also, spellcasters often will be trying to keep their distance from enemies, so there's a good chance we'll be able to position ourselves to hit only the enemies or a martial character we've protected with heroism. If we need to, we can rely on Step of the Wind or Misty Step to position ourselves even more easily. Lastly, in some cases, we may be able to take advantage of the rules of visibility. Firstly, if we're in darkness and our allies lack dark vision, then we can be potentially hidden from them when we use Hour of Reaping. Also, we can take advantage of line of sight rules to hide ourselves from view. For this, we can take advantage of the environment, or we could potentially use minor illusion to create some cover for ourselves. So long as our allies can't see us when we use Hour of Reaping, or they can't see us while they are frightened of us, then this feature cannot affect them. Level 8. Sorcerer 2, Monk 6. For Sorcerer 2, we gain an additional spell known and 2 metamagic points, which we can convert into a first level spell slot. When we reach Sorcerer 2, we're going to swap out whatever additional spell known we gain here, so we're not going to dwell on it. Just pick your favourite for now. Level 9. Sorcerer 3, Monk 6. This is a really big level for us. Firstly, we gain metamagic, and there are 2 I really like on this build. Quicken Spell and Twin Spell. Quicken Spell is really helpful, as this means we're able to cast Heroism and use Hour of Reaping on the same turn, making it much easier to use. Additionally, we have second level spell slots, so we can upcast Heroism to target 2 creatures now. This could be 2 allies who are within 5 feet of us, or perhaps an ally and ourselves. With Twin Spell, we can also make our single target spells target 2 creatures, so we could effectively upcast Heroism or target 2 creatures with our Chill Touch cantrip by just spending 1 sorcery point. We'll use this more as we get to higher levels. We also gain an additional benefit from Shadow Sorcerer. We automatically learn the Darkness spell, and instead of using a spell slot to cast it, we can instead spend 2 of our sorcery points, and when we do this, it allows us to see through that magical darkness. This is just another tool in our belt for helping us restrict line of sight between us and allies. Interestingly though, some creatures such as fiends can often see through magical darkness using Devil's Sight. We can potentially use this against them, as by casting darkness on ourselves will mean only those creatures can see us when we use Hour of Reaping. Otherwise, darkness and our ability to see through it is just a great buff to our unarmed strikes, helping us land something like Stunning Strike while imposing disadvantage on attacks against us. On our gun variant, I think the Darkness tactic is probably much more party friendly, as we can use our mobility to keep our Cloud of Darkness away from them and continue to attack from range. We also gain 1 additional spell known. We should definitely trade out one of our first level spells for a second level spell, as we get so many great choices. Shadowblade works really well on a monk, as we have excellent dexterity, and if we're using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything optional features, we can potentially use it up to 3 times on our turn instead of the usual 2. Mirror Image helps us double down as a tank, and it benefits from our dexterity and potentially from patient defense. I also really like the web spell for this character. While our save DC isn't great, we could potentially stack the web spell with the frightened effect. Any creature who is caught in our web needs to make a strength check to get free. However, if the creature is also frightened, then they will have disadvantage on their ability check to get free, helping us lock them down. Alternatively, if we have stunned a creature, we can follow up by casting Web. Stunned creatures automatically fail their dexterity and strength saving throws, so this will guarantee that spell affects that creature. And because we can quicken the Web spell, we could potentially land both the Hour of Reaping and Web on the same turn. Lastly, if we want to lean heavier into the vampire flavour, we might consider picking up Spider Climb. This can make it easier to position ourselves somewhere away from our allies when we use Hour of Reaping, and we can even twin it to give that benefit to an ally. Level 10. Sorcerer 4, Monk 6. We gain another ability score increase, another spell known, and another sorcery point. For the gun variant, this would be a good time to pick up something like the Sharpshooter feat. While we're hidden in our own darkness and using key field attack to make 3 attacks with a gun, we could potentially deal really solid damage. Otherwise, if we've gone with the variant human, we would again be better off boosting our wisdom by +2. This improves our armor class to 18 or 23 when we use shield. The DC of Hour of Reaping and Stunning Strike are now both 17. The temporary hit points that we gain from heroism have gone up to +5, and from Touch of Death we could gain up to 11 temporary hit points. For the spells known, consider the ones that we talked about on the previous level. However, again, we're likely to swap this out when we get to our next sorcerer level, so just pick your favourite for now. For other thoughts on spells, please check out the Sun Soul Monk, where I make extensive use of a lot of these arcane spells. Level 11. Sorcerer 5, Monk 6. We gain an additional spell known, and we can swap out one of our second level spells known for a third level spell. There's some really fantastic third level spell options, but one I really want to talk about is Gaseous Form. Normally, Gaseous Form has quite a slow fly speed of just 10 feet. However, as a monk, we get to add our unarmoured movement to this, so instead we would have a fly speed of 25 feet. Gaseous Form also gives us resistance to non-magical damage, and we gain advantage on our strength, dexterity and constitution saving throws. This part is really helpful as resistance to damage, advantage on concentration checks and our inherent proficiency in constitution saving throws means we should be able to maintain concentration on Gaseous Form as long as we need to. Also, the resistance to non-magical damage again benefits our Strength of the Grave feature. We can't attack or cast spells while using Gaseous Form. However, Hour of Reaping is neither of these, so we should be able to use this feature while in Gaseous Form. So we can float around the battlefield as a scary, disembodied cloud, which is as hilarious as it is terrifying. I should say it's worth running this tactic by a DM if you intend to use it. However, rules as written, this should work. I don't think this tactic is too broken, it's just a really nice synergy we can exploit. Other spells I really like on this build are Fly. This again benefits from unarmoured movement, so we'd have a fly speed of 75 foot using this spell. It may be redundant with us having Gaseous Form as well as this, but that movement speed is really great and can help us make the most of our Hour of Reaping. Haste similarly fills this fast movement speed role, but it can also be twinned, allowing us to grant it to both ourselves and an ally. Another spell worth keeping in mind is Catnap, as this is a great way to help us gain our short rest abilities back more quickly. And lastly, I legitimately really like Vampiric Touch on this build. Interestingly, we can use this ability twice on the turn we cast it if we use Quicken. First, we use Quicken spell to cast it as a bonus action, and then we can use that action to repeat the use of it. I think this might be worth doing if we have advantage on the attack roll, since it requires a melee spell attack and our charisma score isn't that great. So we might want to consider using it as a follow-up to stunning a creature. The great thing is that we can potentially kill a creature with this spell, allowing us to both regain hit points and gain our temporary hit points from Touch of Death, possibly taking us from a bad situation to a much stronger one in one fell swoop. And for our final level. Level 12, Sorcerer 6, Monk 6. At level 12 we're going to finish our build by gaining one more level in Sorcerer. This gives us another spell known, so we can consider picking up one of the previous third level spells we were talking about. It also gives us the Shadow Sorcerer's great 6th level feature, Hound of Ill Omen. Using our bonus action and spending 3 sorcery points, we can summon a shadowy wolf which pursues our enemy, attacking it and causing it to have disadvantage on saving throws for spells we cast. This helps make up for our low sorcery spell DC, so makes casting spells with saving throws more viable. It's also another feature we could potentially use while in gaseous form. So while we protect ourselves, we can frighten creatures and summon creatures of the night to attack them. This both makes for great flavour and legitimately useful tactics in battle. Interestingly, there's no actual limit on how many Hounds of Ill Omen we can summon, so feasibly we could continue to summon these creatures in battle by burning through our sorcery points. If we're maintaining our concentration on gaseous form and just using our action for Hour of Reaping, then this might be a great use for our bonus action each round since we can't otherwise use our spells. Or we can use our bonus action for Patient Defense or Step of the Wind to be even more defensive. Beyond level 12. At level 12 we've ended with a character who truly excels at tanking and control, and depending on what spells we chose, we can potentially increase their damage further. We're also bringing a bit of support to the table by casting Heroism on our allies to both protect and bolster them. And this all comes together in a build which really delivers on either the traditional vampire aesthetic or the more modern a la carte variety. But where do we go beyond level 12? I think the funnest direction would be to stick with either our Shadow Sorcerer or Monk levels, as they both offer great features which would make high level play a blast. If we only take Sorcerer levels from here on, then we'd be able to pick up some great high level spells. And with all these spells, we'd have the benefit of being able to stack the Frightened condition on top of them. We could corner multiple creatures with the Frightened condition, and then quicken an area of effect spell like Wall of Fire or Sickening Radiance to trap them in a really bad situation. Telekinesis and Big B's Hand require creatures to make ability checks, so frightened creatures will have disadvantage to resist their effects. Also, there are lots of spells that don't rely on our Charisma score. Animate Objects doesn't rely on our Charisma score. We could also use Polymorph on ourselves or allies to really lean into that shape-shifting aspect of being a vampire. And if we take Sorcerer up to 14th level, we'll get up to 7th level spells and the Shadow Sorcerer's 14th level feature, Shadow Walk. Shadow Walk lets us move between shadows at will, which gives us an amazing campaign capstone, topping us off with ludicrous mobility, helping us again maintain features like Hour of Reaping. Alternatively, if we take Monk to 14th level, we'll gain the 11th level feature Mastery of Death. Having this feature when going into the highest tiers of play is very useful, especially on a spellcaster with some great concentration spells. It also helps us get more out of Strength of the Grave, as we can activate this before Mastery of Death to potentially save ourselves a key point. And if we end at 14th level Monk, that means we get Time and Soul as our campaign capstone, which ensures that we have saving throw proficiency in all possible saving throws. And along the way, we'd be picking up even better mobility, more key points for Stunning Strike, and defensive features like Evasion and Stillness of Mind to make us even more resilient. Or we could take a mix of the two. Monk 11 and Sorcerer 9 would give us both Mastery of Death and 5th level spell slots. Along the way, we could either improve our Dexterity or Constitution with ability score increases, making level 8 in both of the classes really attractive. I'd also want to pick up features like Tough or Warcaster to make us more resilient and improve our concentration checks further. So, what do you all think? How would you take this build further? Do you think it fulfills the vampire class fantasy? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you everyone for following me on this morbid adventure into how to make a vampire by optimizing the Way of Long Death Monk. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the comments on this. I think this is a great build, especially if anyone's looking at making a one-shot character for something around Halloween. So please let me know your thoughts and I'll be sure to respond to every single one. Alright, thank you everyone, and happy Halloween.